Welcome to the Under the Hat podcast, the show where we talk about everything and anything that is top of mind in education. The goal is to provide meaningful conversation to what is currently happening in our classrooms. Stories, pains, moments of success. We want to hear it all.
Welcome back, friends. It is, for me at least, a Saturday morning here. I'm still sipping my coffee, so just, don't mind me over here. And Tricia is here with me. Tricia Fogelstad. And so we are here this morning. We were just talking casually about just life, about teaching, and I was like, wait a second, we have to go live. And I'm excited to Tricia, thank you for being here, especially on a Saturday. And so I'm super eager to continue this conversation with you because I am super eager to learn about your context, about what you've done in education as an art teacher, the augmented reality, all that fun stuff. But first, how are you this afternoon?
I'm doing really well, and I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much, Steve, for having me here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we're super eager to learn from you. If you are dropping in right now live, please feel free to drop in questions, comments, where you're from in the chat. But if you're watching this in the future, we'll have everything in the show notes that we talk about. And so I am super excited about this. So Tricia, like we're talking earlier before we went live, like kind of your context, where you started as an art teacher, kind of where you are now. So give us that tea, like how'd you get into education? And then what is the most like current thing happening for the Fugal Fund? Yeah.
Sure. So I'm a K-5 art teacher, and I was in an elementary art room for about 30 years. I'm currently out, transitioning still. It feels new to be out of the classroom. But I went into art education accidentally, I just kind of landed that, and I wanted to be an artist and went to college to be an artist. And then at some point I realized, there's no steady paycheck for that. And I started getting really nervous. I'm like, I have to promote myself. Like, I have to tell people that I'm worth money. And that's really stressful. So what if I went into a job that will give me money and then I could still be creative? And so I threw that career together at the last minute, which extended my college education a little bit. But then I realized when I became an art teacher that my personality of being an introvert and shy and not speaking in a classroom setting for like my entire childhood was not lending itself naturally to being a teacher. So I was petrified of the fact that I'm a teacher now, and tried really hard to grow and change and stretch and figure out how to be the job that I have chosen. And so it was a rough start, but I figured out my groove. I was the only art teacher in my building, of course, so I didn't have anybody to look at. And art teachers understand how isolating it is to be an art teacher. And so there were about 5 to 7 art teachers at any given time in my district. And we were very isolated because we never really leave our buildings unless we have to travel to be on a cart, or you take all of the kids at your school and then maybe some at another school. And then the batch of kids switch every year. You've got to juggle somewhere between 500 and 700 names. You feel like your relationship with children are kind of shallow sometimes, and same with the staff. It's just a difficult position. But after time, you figure out a groove, and you figure out how to advocate and get a voice and speak up for the kids and improve your program. And so I luckily was in that one position long enough to figure it out and do well.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point that I think, at least for me, I often forget about. Like if you're an art teacher, sometimes a music teacher, sometimes like I don't know, computer science, like you're like that singleton, right? That speech teacher. Like it like we have these subjects where, in oftentimes in education, like as a history teacher, I had like 14, maybe 15 other people that was they were teaching the same thing I was teaching, right? And like
Mhm.
right there in house, like so I would imagine like social media was a huge thing for you, like in terms of like leaning on other art teachers, and because yeah, like and then also like the idea of like a common assessment. There ain't no common assessment. You it's the one that's the one assessment, right? Like it's not you don't have that build, right? And so um how, I guess my question is like, how instrumental was other PLCs, social media? Like how did you maneuver that? Because I would imagine that was a challenge.
It was a big role in me getting the big picture of elementary art. So I started teaching at a time when technology wasn't really a thing, to be honest, because, we're talking 30 years. So I went to college with an electric typewriter, right? And then I graduated, still didn't have skills in computers. I didn't know how to format my my resume. Like I typed it and I couldn't figure out how to get the margins right and spacing. And I remember my dad's like, "I'm giving this to my secretary. She'll figure this out for you." And that was back when we called them secretaries instead of administrative assistants. So so that's where I started. And I felt very isolated. I was the only one. And then it was a new thing to have an art teacher in my district. So I didn't have a curriculum. Nobody handed anything to me. So it was everything I could glean from student teaching. And then I had no resources, like nobody online telling me what to do because there was no online yet. So I worked so hard and pulled from all of my inner resources the best I could until I was completely drained. There was nothing left of me. And that was just the first year in December. I remember a cry for help I did where I drew a picture of myself looking extremely frazzled and I stuck it in the teacher's lounge. It was my cry for help. And nobody came to rescue me. And I didn't have a mentor. I was in too many buildings, I think, and nobody kept track of me. So I didn't understand the culture of the buildings. I didn't understand anything. And I just remember that cry for help picture and nobody came. So I was like, okay, I got to figure this out and I got to make it to the end of the year. And at the end of the year, they said, we're going to let you go. You failed. And
Wow.
so I cried and they said, well, let's think about this. Did you have a mentor? I'm like, no. And did you have a classroom? I'm like, no. I was in 2 buildings. I traveled every day at lunch. I ate lunch in the car. And my afternoon sessions were in the kindergarten room, and we all sat on kindergarten chairs, even the 5th graders. So I didn't have good teaching. And in the morning, I was on a cart in a 2-story building, and I didn't actually have a cart. It was just whatever I could carry in my hands. And I was supposed to store everything in the teacher's lounge and do my work in the teacher's lounge, but everybody was mad that I was in the teacher's lounge. So I had a terrible situation, and I asked myself a lot of times, why did I stick through? Why didn't I quit? Instead, I get told I'm going to be fired. And so then they said, well, maybe we didn't give you a fair chance. So they put me in a different building where there was a brand new art room that nobody had ever used. And they said, how about you just make this your home base and we'll tell the principal that they're lucky to have you. How about that? And I'm like, wow, okay. And so nobody knew that I had a terrible first year. They said, oh, we're lucky to have Tricia. And the very first week, the building had a remodel, and that's what added the art program. They said, there's this blank wall here. Wouldn't it be nice if our school, Dryden, had a logo and then it was painted here in time for the open house next week? And I'm like, okay, I'll do anything if you're going to give me a chance like this. So I painted it. I designed it, painted it, put it up on the wall. The paint was still wet by the time the open house happened. And that warm welcome that I got from the principal and the community thinking I was a treat, like somebody special to come to their building, changed everything for me. I just was, I'm going to make this job work. Even though I feel like I could be a failure so easily, I could also turn this around and figure it out. And that warm environment made a huge difference. And if you want to fast forward 2011, and it's awkward to say this, but I was art teacher of the year for Illinois. And so they almost fired the art teacher of the year. I just needed time, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And like, because like that was within your first year, right? And there's so much that most people have to figure out, like in that first year of just like, what kind of teacher do you want to be? Like that's that working with student teachers now, with kind of, you know, one of my roles, like that's always the question that I ask is like, well, they're in classrooms, they're looking at their mentors, and sometimes what they see, they don't want to be like,
Exactly.
and so, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like there's nothing wrong with like, I'll have students like, man, like my cooperating teacher is the really strict one. I don't want to be that. I'm like, well, then don't. Right. And so that's part of like figuring things out. And when we are administrators or parents or what have you, when we're like judging like this first year teacher, we don't know who they're going to become. We don't know what they're going to do. We don't know what they're going to accomplish. But what we can do is build trust, and we can build relationships and listen, right? Like that to me, to your point, is like that first year is so wild. And I don't care what your student teaching experience was, it is not that first year. And so I'm really glad. It saddens me to hear your story a little bit, like that. It saddens me, but it's also empowering as well, as like, cool, like this is a story of growth, right? This is a story of empowerment. And so Tricia, I'm really glad that worked out for you. And so now, like, you are, because you mentioned before you're in the middle of a transition, or maybe like a slow burn, if you will, of transitioning out. Maybe speak on that. Like, are you did you slowly, like an entrepreneur? Are you working for a company? Like, what is a little bit more context around your transition?
Well, I'm in the middle of something, and I don't know really where it's going yet. But
Okay.
I am finding that my skills are transferable. You know, I had to run the show as an elementary art teacher. I had to create the project. I had to facilitate the project. I encouraged the children to persevere through the projects. I showcased the projects. I found ways to pull out educational content, you know, and share it with the community. I did so much, and I didn't realize it until I see now, you know, I wrote a children's book, and I worked with a augmented reality company that helped me bring it to life, every page of it. And I did a book pitch, and it was received, and I got a book contract through Teacher Goals. And then in working with them, I realized I can create more content and make it accessible for teachers. And I helped run the World Read Aloud event for Teacher Goals, and all the pieces of putting that together, from, you know, getting sponsors to hosting an art contest that we had global entries, and just like showcasing the other books and creating an activity packet for it. It's like all of this just feels really natural, the kind of stuff that I was doing all the time. So I don't know what that's going to look like, but I do know I just want more of it because it just makes sense. Children's books have always played a really important role in what I do with my students. And so making a children's book was a dream, to make the book that I wish I had, basically. I think that's a theme in what I do, is I try to do the thing for the kids that I wish I had. Like, even in the story of my student teaching in my first year, I had I think something like 13 student teachers over the years. And I wanted to give them what I wish I had. More support, more encouragement, more room to make mistakes, guidance, mentorship. It's just, I wanted to give them more so they could have a better foundation than I had. Didn't have to go through all the struggles. Same with my students. In elementary school, I was at a private school, Catholic school, and we didn't have an art teacher. That's another weird thing. I'm an art teacher and I never had one until high school. But I always wanted one. So I thought, okay, here's the opportunity to be the art teacher I wish I had, and what would that look like? And I didn't have any bad references, so I only had my dream reference. So I just be the dream art teacher that I wish I had.
Yeah, no, that resonates with me. Like, I don't know, like, when I was in the high school classroom, I wanted to provide something that I felt I didn't receive, right? Like, I didn't feel supported as a student. I wasn't too academic, and then I struggled as a result. So, like, to me, it was like, how do I make a learning experience that will impact more lives, will impact more students, that will make it more equitable? So yeah, like, kind of we're same thing, but like maybe different contexts of subject. But yeah, that's to me, that's the ultimate goal of teachers, right? Is like, how do we provide a better experience than what we received? And I view that way in teaching. I view that way as a parent, right? And so yeah, so to me, that's a big part of it. I do want to drop this in here. And so Tricia, like, your Amazon link takes us to your book. It takes us to a little bit more context of like what you were doing in terms of creativity and innovation, and are still doing. And that is the augmented reality piece of it. So I was never into this in the classroom. So I basically know nothing other than, like, generally what that kind of technology is. So first of all, like, how did you get into augmented reality, I guess, is my first question. And then secondly, like, what are some maybe benefits and outcomes that you saw with using this type of technology in the classroom?
Okay. So I, like I said, I didn't have technology and an understanding of like technology tools when I started. So I was struggling as a teacher with like 5 classes a day, 6 classes a day, how to deliver in an engaging way when I don't have a way to make my visuals big, right? Like I didn't have
Mhm.
anything. Imagine like nothing. And I've got 25 kids in the room, and I want to give them these experiences where ideally this is the way I wanted my lessons to go. I wanted to hook them, get them excited about an artist. I wanted to relate our work back to an artist. So I needed to give them a big picture. Who is this artist? But my tools were like maybe a book, or my tools were a print. And my collection of prints, maybe I had 1 or 2 examples of a particular artist. I just didn't have a collection that I I wish I could have had. So 1 or 2 prints and a book. So I do a lot of talking and saying, if you could see it, it would look like this. It kind of looks, like it's a visual arts class. And I didn't have a way to communicate visually what was going on. So then I say, if we're going to, be inspired by this artist, I want to take you from step A to step Z on this particular art making experience. But you're just going to have to trust me, because, or like, I will give you an example, but if I didn't have time to build that example totally out, because maybe it takes 6 sections of an art class to finish this piece of art, I didn't have 6 sessions to prepare for this, because they come at me so fast, right? So, so I was like, you're just gonna have to trust me. And for a while there, it worked. They trusted me, and we were like, they were in the dark as I was leading them to an end point. Then I thought, okay, here's the ideal situation. I show them a slideshow of art from an artist. I show them a digital version of my work and every step in between. And then I hook them with music, and maybe there's an animated something, or maybe there's like some media piece I could pull in. Maybe there's a clip from a movie that in pop culture that they can connect to. Like, I had all these ideas, but I didn't have the tools to do it. So I wrote a grant so I could have a projector and a computer in my room, because we didn't have those. So if I could just have a way to get what's on a computer on a screen, that would make a big difference. And they didn't have that. So I remember there was a time when I had a computer hooked up to a TV, and the TV was for morning announcements kind of thing. And then there wasn't no morning announcements. What was I thinking? It was more if you had a VHS tape. That's what it was. That's what that TV was. So anyway, I remember wanting so much to be able to zoom in and show them a detail on that TV, and I couldn't. So I'm pulling them all over. We're crowding 25 kids around a TV screen that's this big. And then I wanted to point out something, so I'm taking dry erase markers and I'm trying to like circle things on the glass, and they thought that was cool technology. And like, they were totally engaged. And I'm like, what? That's engaging to you that I used a red dry erase marker on a glass screen? So I'm like, if that wins them over, imagine if I had a computer. Imagine if I had a screen. Imagine if I had an interactive board. And so what ended up happening is I was never overwhelmed by technology. I was always underwhelmed, begging, because I was on the other side of the curve, So like, I was always begging, can we have more? Can we have more? Can we have more? And there was a time in early 2000s that everybody was talking about 21st century skills. And so there were sometimes these tech companies that had amazing tools that they wanted to get into the classroom. They wanted free advertising, so they would create these student video contests. And they'd say, create a student video and enter it into a contest. Tell us why you want all of our tools, and then somebody's going to get a classroom makeover. So we were all over that. And so we started entering everything we could. And this was the beginning of Fugleflex, which is something that I'm kind of known for, just making student-created art-related movies for kids by kids. And later it turned into entering into film festivals, and we were at the Chicago International Children's Film Festival. We had a movie screen at the Sydney Opera House in Sydney, and just like amazing things came out of that idea, but it started with just begging for technology. So we did win a couple things, and then as we would win, then we got more momentum until finally, and I'm leading up to the question you asked about augmented reality, sorry. So finally, we got to the point where we had a classroom set of iPads. And so it was a slow process of like building up and begging and finding the need. And then once we got the classroom set of iPads, we were so ready then, because we had played with ideas, and now we have the tool to make it happen. And so,
Mhm.
it was still 2011 when iPads were just brand new. And so we started doing something called transdigital art, where we'd make art physically, and then we found a digital extension of that art project. And so one of the first things that we did, this was like the light bulb moment for us, was a little second grade project that was called the Spooky Landscape. It's pretty much just what you would think.
Mhm.
And it
Nice.
fit really good at Halloween time.
Right.
So,
Right.
but in the normal spooky landscape, we were
Mhm.
talking about a lot of art concepts. There was, foreground, middle ground, background overlapping. We used primary and secondary colors. We mixed to make our secondary colors. And so we had horizon line, landscape, lots of terminology, and it was really good stuff. And then we'd add a ghost in the painting in the foreground. So we talk about foreground and overlapping when we do that. And then when we had these iPads, I'm like, hold it, let's stop. What if we made this painting without the ghost, and then we add the ghost in digitally over a photograph of our painting? And then when we do this, we can create an animation path. We can change the opacity and talk about transparency. And it would naturally have overlapping. So not only are we creating something super cool, right? An animated ghost, but and we can make that ghost have movement within itself as well as movement for a path. So there's like two kinds of animations we could talk about: the overlapping and then transparency. And then if we wanted to, we can get really fancy and add rotation, who knows what. We could add audio and create more of a dynamic experience for students. I can feel that coffee kicking in. The words are coming out better, so anyway, I was super excited about that idea. And for me, that changed everything because that lesson had good content for my students and was very age appropriate. But the iPads, because of apps like the Do Ink animation and green screen apps, those are really intuitive, simple apps to use for the kids. Now we can add these really high level experiences and create this dynamic media that adds more layers of content as far as instruction goes for my students. I was sold.
Yeah. No, like everything that you explain, like how you would lay that out, and I'm thinking more along the lines of like skills, right? The skill sets that you're teaching is so nuanced. Like it's not like if they were doing it on paper, like you're teaching maybe like one or two skills, like whether it's shading. Again, I'm no art teacher, but like I would imagine that like the skills there are limited in comparison to what you're doing with the technology layover of all this, where like there's skills that are so, again, go back to the word nuanced, of like there's a lot going on there, and it feels like it if you're not using the tech right now as an art teacher, it's a missed opportunity for like how they would actually use art right now in this century, right? And
Absolutely. Wow.
yeah, and that's I mean, like, because if you're gonna teach art, you might as well take the full CTE approach, the career readiness approach of like what would this look like in industry, right? And because what would this look like if you were working alongside a marketing team, let's say, right? And the and this kind of when you were explaining this too, like the other thought I had was like, if you are not using the technology, it's would be like if a music teacher didn't have instruments, because I feel like it's so important that you're using these tools alongside of the creativity on site, like alongside the art, because of it's not a want, it's a need, right? Like, so when you first reached out about these iPads, it was, in my view, in my head, and Tricia, maybe this is like what you were thinking at the time, was like, no, this is a need. This is not a want, because this is something that is going to make my content more relevant to what is currently happening in industry at the moment.
I think the context of the timing of it needs to be explained, though, because it seems really obvious now. It just wasn't then, right? So I think it wasn't obvious why I needed a projector in the classroom, because, why? Why? I mean, you're going to teach with digital tools. What's that for instruction? Why? And so I had to prove it. I had to write a grant, get it, and then prove it and advocate for my program and my approach every step of the way. So I was the first classroom in my building to have a projector. And then it was the next year that the whole district said, okay, every classroom gets a projector. We see the value. I don't know if it was because of me or because I advocated it and then others were like, yeah, I need that too. And I don't know what really led up to it, but cool thing, right? And then when I had a chance to have when we got the interactive board, I wrote a grant for that too. And then that I built lessons and instructional tools or plans for how to make an interactive board integral into what we were doing. Like, for example, the overlapping. So I wanted kids to just take the objects and learn how to overlap. And so while we were, building a landscape, and I said something's going to be in the foreground, so it needs to be bigger and it needs to be up front and nothing overlaps it when it's in the foreground. So can we play with these objects and see if we can put together foreground, middle ground, and background digitally before we sit down and do it physically on our artwork? It seems so easy to me. What a simple concept, but it was revolutionary. And the kids just excelled because they had these sort of hands-on experiences with digital tools that are just, fun and engaging, right? And also forgiving. If you get it wrong, who cares? You just undo and fix it. Where on paper, it's a little frightening when you make a mistake. You have to really figure out how to fix it on paper. So we found really innovative ways, I think, to use the interactive experience on an interactive board and create. I think that's also another key, is that we weren't consumers of technology. We were creators on technology. So it was a different way to look at technology in the art room for me and my students, because, people are like, oh, kids don't know everything that they need to do on their iPads. Actually, no, they didn't, because, I don't know, and maybe they're doing a lot more creating in now. So maybe yes now, but back then, no. I mean, they weren't creating on their iPad. They were consuming and they were playing. And that got them familiar with the ideas of how an iPad works, the swipe and the pinch and all that stuff. But when it came to drawing and animating and using green screen and those concepts, that was all new to them and exciting. And we had to grow, in our skills too. And then the problem solving that came out of that, though, because I get chills just thinking about it. When you understand how the tools work, and just when you're good at figuring out your pencil and your coloring pencil and your markers, your paint, you can now just think about creating. What do you want to use these tools for? And so that's how we approached our iPads, where it's we didn't need to have the newest app. We were looking at it as, these apps can do what? Okay, now let's create.
That's amazing. And I never really, again, not being an art teacher myself, I never really thought about it in that way of if you know all the moving parts of the tools, now you can really get your hands dirty with creating something special, right? Which maybe on one hand, we all do, right? Just different contexts. As a history teacher, I knew how to use all these different ed tech tools, but a lot of times they were all complementing each other, right? So I'm kind of in my own head right now. I'm talking it out and comparing it to that. But you also had the point of like consuming versus producing. And you're right, during that time, because this may have been like I don't know, 2011, 2012 is kind of what I heard.
Yeah.
But even because for me it was like 2 years ago since I was in the high school classroom, I would even argue like that's even then was still true. And observing classrooms now as a university supervisor in my area, I think that's still the issue, because right now students really know how to post. They know how to like, but that's the extent of their producing, right? And I remember like it was kind of a spectrum. Like I would have students, like you would have them open a Google Doc, and like it was surprising how little they knew of how to just like word processing, right? Like how to just do things in a Google Doc. And then even then I would even move them into like, I don't know, like a Wii video, uh, in Adobe Premiere, like, like video editing stuff. And that was a whole party that they've never even seen, right?
Wow.
And this is just a little less than 2 years ago, right? So like I still think that this is a worthwhile conversation of like, okay, cool, we know how to consume technology, that is great, but how much of a need do you, like, how important do you think it is for all learners to know how to produce? Because to me that is kind of a big issue, that we don't know how to do that like as a people. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I was just realizing that I never got to the answer for the AR thing either, but
Hmm.
I was working my way
It's
towards
okay.
it. It's like,
No, it's
what?
good. It's good.
But I think yes, I was thinking about like a scenario where when we knew what our goal was, like let's say I had a group of kids and we found out about a student video opportunity, a film festival,
Hmm.
and they they knew what the theme was, they knew how long it needed to be, they knew what content they wanted to communicate through their movie. And many times these bugle flicks that we would create, these student created movies, were really just me tricking them into learning. And I think you talked about this with what's her name, Renee Dawson. She was, is
Yes.
that is that her name?
Yep.
Yeah, about making movies with kids, and really they're having so much fun and they're so engaged, but really the content of what they're sharing is a learning resource. And so that's what the whole idea of Fugal Flicks was. It was based on my appreciation of the fact that I grew up singing Sesame Street songs and Schoolhouse Rocks. I don't know if you know Schoolhouse Rocks, but
Oh
like
yeah.
I can sing the preamble. Think about that. I can sing the preamble of the Constitution. And there's no way I would have wanted to memorize that on my own, maybe like for the eighth grade test, right? But um, the eighth grade test, when that subject came up, I sang it to myself. And then I was able to answer the
Hmm.
question, whatever the question was, I don't remember. But so what it was to me is I realized that the songs are going to go deep into my memory, and I'm going to become emotionally connected to this content when it's a song, and I'll be able to pull it up at any time because it went into a different part of my memory, my brain. And so how about we can make music videos? And that's basically what Fugal Flicks are, music videos. They're 3 minutes long at most. So the structure is created from the lyrics. So the lyrics really have to be clever and full of good content. And then we just plan out, what do we see while we're hearing this song? We could pre-record then we could lip sync it. We could do it lots of different ways. But now that we've got the structure, what do we want to see? And this is where the technology piece comes in, because the kids are like so imaginative and so creative, and they don't have anybody stopping them when they come up with these ideas. So like, for example, glue blues was one of the things. A first grader cried because she couldn't get the glue to come out of her glue bottle. It was all cruddy.
Mm,
Another child, this is a real scene. This is what led up to needing to do glucose. So another child took out the scissors and was about to cut the tip. Another child said, no, I'll fix it. And then took the wrong part of the top off and opened it so that it totally gushed out all over. So those things needed to be addressed to my my students that in that group and in every group for the entire future of my life, right? Everybody needs to know
yeah.
about how to deal with glue issues. So
Yeah.
I had this group of fifth graders who came together who wanted to make a fugal flick, and I said, can you tackle this glue issue and let me just spell out what goes wrong? And they're like, oh, we're all about it. We understand everything that goes wrong with glue, and we can add in a few things otherwise. And then they came up with these amazing ideas, this beautiful song, very emotional song too, called the Glue Blues.
Mm,
And they said, now we're going to be the glue bottles in the movie. And at some point, we're going to need to be flipped upside down while we're still the face of the glue bottle singing, and all the glue is going to come gushing out. So I remember talking 2010. How do you do this? But nothing limits that creative idea. The only thing that limited us was our technology tools. So that
mm,
motivation to try to figure out what of our consumer level tools that we have available to us can help us see some of that imagination come into reality. And we learn so much just because we're so motivated and excited about those ideas. And so we got it to work. They got it in a film festival. They won first place, and it was amazing. And it also screened at the Chicago International Children's Film Festival. And will go down in history as a motivating movie to always take care of your glue.
that I just love how it's sometimes it's the small things that we don't think about on a regular basis, right? And it's those things that can make something a learning experience so relevant. And I loved how your fifth grade students were like, oh yeah, I know that issue. I know all about that issue. And it's really you did such a good job of just meeting your content, taking the content and meeting them where they're at with it, because it was something that was oh yeah, no, I'm a fifth grader. I'm actually an expert in this area of glue issues, right? And so I absolutely love that. Absolutely love that. And just again, the technology need here, going back to that, is super inspiring. So if you can talk a little bit about your because I have your book. Is it robot coloring and drawing book?
That's one of them. But yeah.
One of them. Yeah. Okay.
But it's Peter
So
on meter.
got it. So
Yeah.
kind of, yeah. So talk a little bit about that. What inspired you to, publish your own work? And my understanding is you did all the illustration for it, right? Yeah, I was super eager to hear kind of the story behind the book.
I keep on leading up to it, and then I stop. Sorry.
No, it's good. It's good.
So we were doing transdigital art that was physical and digital, and we didn't have a really good way to showcase it. So, when you think about the practicality, kids make physical art, you just hang it in the hallway. People go through the hallway and they understand what's going on and the value that's happening in the art room. If you don't hang things in the hallway, people forget that we're valuable and that there's real learning happening in the art room. And so when it comes time for the community to learn about the art program, maybe at the yearly art show, it's really important that you are able to show all the good things that we're learning in the art room, because you need to advocate all the time as an art teacher, because you're on the chopping block sometimes. When they think that you're not valued, they don't want to put the resources towards you. So here we are making these digital pieces that go along and complement our physical art making, but we didn't really have a good way to share that. So like I worked on ways. Like one way was to like have an iPad looping some of the animations and videos out in the hallway. So make a kiosk experience, which works for a limited community. I was able to work with the public library and get some of their iPads locked in place, looping some of our work. That was good. And there was like a cable station for a while that the district hosted, and I was able to show some of the Fugal flicks through their cable station only like maybe 2-3 times a year. I mean, like they're 3-minute movies. You like sneeze, you miss something. And so I just wasn't finding a lot of success until we learned about augmented reality, because what we wanted to do was to pull up the animation at the same time you're looking at the physical art. And that's what we were able to do with augmented reality. So one example is the 5th graders did a project where they made these beautiful robots, and the robots were really fun to animate. After we photographed them, we animated them to make them like have their gauges move, or they blinked, or their gears spun, etc. There's so many cool things you can do with a robot. And so that we set up the augmented reality so that when they were in the hallway, we could take those iPads, put the necessary app on it, scan the actual physical art in the hallway, and watch the animation happen on our iPads. And that just blew us all away. And when the community could see that, now we were playing a different kind of game. This art room here, we're doing some major different kinds of things, and now you finally get to see it instead of a physical piece of art and then walk over to that iPad and see a scrolling animation and like not really understand the connection. So augmented reality brought everything together. And so it's a different kind of use than some people have. Some people add extra layers of information and videos that, you know, there's so many different ways you could use augmented reality, but what we were doing was pulling up the art and making it come to life. So I started thinking, now that I understand this concept, what else could we use it for? So I started by just getting print material, like things that were already printed, and trying to make an animation based on that print and make it come to life. So some of the things that I played with were like sewing patterns, like an old sewing pattern where it shows that like a woman from the 1950s in a dress. And then I just found some images. I found a collection, and then I thought, well, what if those people came to life and had like a little conversation or movement or some sort of story to tell? So I did it as a artistic challenge to myself to see if I could do it, and I figured it out. It was just process and set them up, and they came to life and they told little stories, and it was so magical to me. If I'm excited about something, I'm definitely going to be able to get my students excited about it. That's usually how it works. So I just kept on playing and playing until I found some ideas that worked for them. Because like some of these ideas were too technical for my students to do because they're, you know, limit, you know, tools and time. So we found some ideas like augmented reality kindness posters. That was a big hit. So the kids wrote a kindness message. Then they did a video where they spoke expressively what their kindness message was, and then they stopped. And so in that stopped moment, that was the trigger image. And then when it gets scanned, they come to life seamlessly and say their kindness message. And it looked so magical. And so it was inspired by, I was able to show them scenes from Harry Potter and the paintings that came to life. So the paintings are the still image, and then within that still image, it just comes to life. You could hear them, you can see the movement. So it was a graphic design project, basically. They wrote a kindness message. So they created this graphic of them and the kindness message. And then when you scan it, they come right to life. And they were told to like be expressive without moving their body too much. So it was really kind of cute to see the whole collection where kids were like doing some very odd, they don't really talk that way. They took it very seriously, but they understood that if you move too much, it wouldn't work. And then we had an extra piece. We animated wings behind them, so that they had the symbol of kindness behind them, then some sort of expressive speaking, and then their kindness message. It was really beautiful, and it was a large project, and took many weeks to get through all the steps, but the results are treasures in that it communicates the big kids. I mean, these are the big kids sharing with the entire school community their messages of kindness.
Yeah, that's such a it's so inspiring to hear how this kind of technology can enhance not just the content but the whole learner, right? Like there's an SEL component to this. There is an expression. There's a UDL, right? If you're trying to lean into that in terms of accessibility and representation, expression, and I almost feel like while yes, you did this in the context of an art teacher, I feel like this technology can be used in any content, right? Like I can see like hearing you talk about it, I'm like, oh, I've really leaned into this like while teaching the First World War, let's say, right? Like because I can think of multiple different ways of how it can be used there. So if you're listening, and selfishly I'm asking for myself, or even like my adult learners, like where can we start, right? Like how, if we wanted to use augmented reality, if we want to use this type of technology with our students now, with like budget in mind, right? Like what are some tools, what are some tips, what are some ways that we could like easily implement this tomorrow?
Right. Well, I mean, what we did was we used a green screen app by Do Inc. And it gave us the tools for animating the wings, and it gave us the tools for the green screen effect, and it gave us the tools to create the digital design, the text over color. All of it was part of it. I actually, on the fuglefun.com website, I packaged, this is one of the things that I did is, as I was teaching, teachers were like, I want to do that. How? And, it's a process. There's so much to it. I'll document when I can on my blog, but how about I just package it all for you, show you step by step, put in the tutorials, give you even all my handouts so that you can have everything you need, and a guide that either you can go through step by step with the students, or you can assign it individually. So on my fuglefun.com, you can just see that I have a pay teacher goal, our room, what's it called? Store. Teacher paid teachers. And it links on my fuglefun.com website. And you can just see I packaged all of it. So I don't just throw things at my students. I say, like, today we're going to work on our kindness message. And so here's some handouts to get us thinking. Here's some resources to generate. Here's some activities that we're going to go through to generate kindness messages. The next week, we're going to learn how to animate the wings. So let's go through the steps for wings and blah, blah, blah. The next week, we're going to film the green screen part. And what are some things that we're going to need to do while you're waiting? Here's an activity for children that are hospitalized, and let's be actively kind while we're waiting to give our kindness message. So like I put all that together in a package, and I have over 100 lessons like this where I'm trying to, and the tools that I use might not be the tools you use, because you can change this up for whatever is more modern or available for you. But the concepts are all the same.
Awesome. Yeah. So so the Do Ink, I just looked it up. It's an iPad app from what
Yes.
I'm gathering here. Yeah.
But
And I do have this. I'll put it up here as well. But yeah, go ahead.
yeah.
Go ahead.
But if you're on Chromebooks, you could do the whole thing. I'm pretty sure you could do the whole thing in Canva now. All of
Okay.
all the tools are there too.
Awesome.
So for my little people, and then the augmented reality part, we use iJack app. So there's tutorials in my package lesson, but there might be other apps that allow you to create. So that's the key, is you have to be able to be the creator of the augmented reality. Which
Awesome. Yeah.
leads to this book. So that I wanted to have a book that could come to life, that pages actually come to life. And when I pitched this book, I wanted it to be fully augmented, because that's the kind of direction I was going with my students. And, so I wanted to infuse social emotional learning into a story that also could teach other things, like there's hints of universal design, there's hints of inclusion and how to calm yourself. Self-regulation is in the story. And there's also connections to an art teacher would like that for every emotion that Peter feels, the facial expression changes, the music changes, and the colors change. So you can connect emotion to all these different things that artists use to communicate feelings. And it asks you in the story, it's an interactive story. So there's 6 times in the story where Peter says, I need your help. What button should I press on my emotion panel? Which I never explained, but so Peter is a robot who just got a newly upgraded emotion panel, and it needs calibration. So as he goes through his day, his body has a response. His robot body has a response to certain circumstances. So maybe his starts to bubble up and steam, or his gear starts spinning, or something's going on, like his motor's humming. And so when he's getting this physical response in his body, then you're called to help him figure out what button to press on his emotion panel. So at that moment, the reader is asked, okay, so what is the context? What could he be feeling? Let me practice empathy. Let me look for clues. What's the expression on his face? What colors do I see on the page? And then they can scan the page, and the page comes to life. It plays music. You can hear the drama of the scene. And then you are given buttons, and you can send your advice to Peter as to which button you would suggest he press. You turn the page and find out what happened.
That is so cool. That is like the most interactive book. I feel like all books should be that way. And as a big Star Wars fan, I'm like, I hope Star Wars authors are listening to this, because that would be awesome. Like how interactive can you make a reading experience, right? And especially because to me, it's like, it's not just for students. Like I want that as an adult, like as a 30-something-year-old man. I'm like, that is incredible. And I just applaud you for that kind of work and like thinking differently with that. Tricia, we're like a minute out from being done, and I didn't even get to ask you what is under the hat for you, and so we don't have time for that. So, Tricia, if you don't mind, what this means is that you have to come back and to almost like continue this conversation with me. And so, if you're willing, we definitely want you back and to dive into more of the under the hat content. But yeah, I do want to be respectful of time though. And so as we wrap up, I do have all of Tricia's info, right? So you have the fugalfun.com, which is beautiful branding, by the way. here's the Twitter, right, or the X, if you will,
Yeah.
and then the Amazon, right, and so you can catch all of Tricia's work in terms of publishing, in terms of the amazing books that she has published. I do have the Do Inc. That's up there as well. But friends, thank you for joining us. There's quite a few of you that are catching this live. I appreciate all of you. If you want more content, if you want to continue the support, you know where to find me, Steve, at underhatpod.com. That is the website, underhatpod.com. Continue to give out that support. Continue to drop in those subscriptions, those likes, all that fun stuff, the DMs as well. I'm here for all of it. I hope that you've learned. I've learned a bunch from Tricia, and so Tricia, we really appreciate you being on, and hopefully we get to do this again.
I appreciate this too. This was so fun. Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, and fun for me, fun for Tricia, and I hope all of you had fun as well. Until next time, friends, because again, we're being respectful of time. Keep your hats on, keep your minds open, enjoy the rest of your Saturday, the rest of your weekend. Take care.
Bye.